What's happening, everyone? It's me, it's Count, here with a brand new Pokemon Go video. Deoxys is now a legendary raid boss. It has moved on from EX raids, and if you want to be able to solo this raid boss, well, you are at the right place. This is really good for people who live in rural areas where it's really difficult to get raid groups going, and especially for a lot of players who did not participate in EX raids. I know a lot of people who do not have Deoxys. It's interesting mainly because they did a lot of improvements to the EX raid system, but people still did not get EX raid passes this go around. So a lot of people are missing Deoxys in their Pokedex, so now is a prime opportunity to get this Pokemon, especially because we do not know when it will return, mainly because it is a mythical Pokemon. So if you end up enjoying this video, if you find it to be extremely helpful, make sure you share it with your friends, make sure you smash that like button, subscribe if it's your first time here, and don't forget that little bell as well. And without further ado, let's jump right into it. Alright, so let's talk about Deoxys. Well, if you were not aware, Deoxys comes in 4 different forms, and the raid boss right now, it's completely random. Starting off, we have the normal form, and unfortunately you cannot actually solo the normal form, but you are able to duo it. What you will want to do is pack your team with Gengar, specifically Gengars with the move Lick and Shadow Claw. These are his best moves. Gengar is basically a glass cannon. He's going to just nuke down Deoxys really quickly, and you want to make sure you do that. And for the second team, because let's be real here, you will move on to a second team with Gengar being such a glass cannon, you will want to pick up a bunch of Tyrannitars with Bite and Crunch and have them be your team too. Mainly because you will want to have that strong anchor and be able to survive for the second round. Normal form Deoxys has a raid CP of 50,271, which may seem like a really high number, but it is something comparable to a lot of other raid bosses that you were able to 2-man before. If you're looking for a perfect IV, its normal form perfect IV CP is going to be 1806, and then his weather boosted form is going to be 2257. Normal form Deoxys does require 2 different trainers with the same setup. You will need a best friend bonus if you want to securely defeat this boss, and I do suggest that both players are at least level 35, with all of your Pokemon being at least level 30. This will ensure the victory, but like I said, it's pretty easy compared to a lot of other raid bosses, so you do not necessarily have to worry about it too much. But yeah, let's move on to the next form. Now, interestingly enough, the attack form Deoxys is actually probably the most relevant Deoxys out of all of the different forms, mainly because it does have an insanely high attack stat compared to a lot of other Pokemon. So if you need a really strong glass cannon generalist, Deoxys attack form is the one you want to focus on. And fortunately enough, this is the one that is actually soloable. Like I said, with the normal form Deoxys, the setup doesn't have to be that much more different. Have a bunch of Gengars and then have a bunch of Tyrannitars as your team too. You should be able to solo this boss if you are level 40 with a bunch of Pokemon that are level 35 and up. Deoxys is extremely squishy. It's going to be really easy if you have more than 2 trainers with you, but if you want to try soloing it, yeah, definitely try this setup. Attack form Deoxys has a raid CP of 41,036, which is pretty low compared to a lot of other legendaries that we've had so far, and like I said, this is mainly because he is super squishy. If you're looking for that perfect IV attack form Deoxys, then the CP that you want to hit is 1474, and if it's weather boosted, you want it to be 1842. Now let's talk about defense form Deoxys. This is probably the most difficult form out of all of the different forms. Unfortunately, you will not be able to solo this one, and you will not be able to 2-man it. You will need at least 3 trainers who are level 40 with level 35 plus Pokemon. This is a really difficult form, and unfortunately it's not something you can defeat with minimal effort. It would be really nice if you could solo this one just like attack form, but unfortunately that's just not the case. But fortunately for you, defense form Deoxys is not something that's really useful. Maybe for PvP it could be, but a lot of people tend to stay away from defense form mainly because there's not really a big use for him. Out of all of the different forms of Deoxys, the attack form is the one you want to pick up anyways, so a lot of players are going to ignore defense form, and yeah, I think that's perfectly fine. But if you are looking to challenge defense form Deoxys, his raid CP is 36,170, which is pretty low compared to the other forms, but do not let that fool you. This boss is extremely difficult to defeat, and you will need a lot of trainers in order to beat it. Its perfect IV CP is going to be 1299, and if it is weather boosted, you want to look for one with 1624. And now let's move on to the very last form of Deoxys. This is the one that's also currently in EX Raid, so if you do have an EX Raid pass for the month of September, you'll come across this Pokemon anyway, but let's talk about it. It is Deoxys' speed form. Much like defense form Deoxys, the speed form is a little bit more well-rounded with his stats, so unfortunately you will not be able to solo this one, and you may not be able to two-man it as well. You will need at least 3 trainers. It is a little bit more difficult compared to the attack form and the normal form. But again, just like the defense form, this is not one that's meta relevant, so you do not have to worry about it too much. It's really that attack form that you want to focus on, so don't worry about speed form unless you just want it for your Pokedex. It's not necessarily going to make or break your raids or your PvP. Its raid CP is 45,802, which if you look at it compared to the other ones, it's the second highest. Now if you're looking for a perfect IV of the speed form, then you're looking for a CP of 1645, but if it's weather boosted, you want it to be 2056. I like the idea of certain different forms of Deoxys being soloable while others are a little bit more challenging. I kind of like that as a model for how legendary raids could be. Like for example, if they were to bring in Raikou or any other Pokemon like Rayquaza, maybe they could have versions of it that are easily soloable but have less chances of being a perfect IV. Something like that I think would be really cool. I think for a lot of players, especially those in rural areas, they face a lot of challenges when it comes to raid battles. I talk to a lot of people who live in rural areas, and unless they spoof, they just are not able to raid bosses, mainly because they can only muster maybe 1 or 2 other trainers. But when it comes to bosses like this, like the attack form Deoxys or the normal form Deoxys, or even Pokemon like Rayquaza that are easily two-manable, well, this breathes a lot of life into rural players, and I really want them to do this for future raids. I think it'd be a really neat idea. Obviously, Deoxys is a little bit of a special Pokemon. It's one of the very few Pokemon that has multiple forms, and obviously Niantic can't really just add forms for other legendaries, but I like the idea of having tiered difficulties for different Pokemon. Like for example, if they were to bring back Groudon, why not have like a tier 4.5 version of him that can be easily two-manned, and you have a less chance of getting a perfect IV with it, but at least it gives players an opportunity to be able to two-man it. I've been saying this for a long time, but bosses that are soloable or bosses that are two-manable, they add a lot of fun to the community. Obviously, Niantic does want to push that community aspect to it, but again, that sort of mentality does favor urban players and leaves rural players out in the back, so I really hope Niantic considers some of this stuff. Like, you can have that big community-based gameplay, but just have different rewards for that, but you absolutely cannot ignore rural players and people who live in low-populated areas who really want to raid, but they're just not able to. Deoxys has multiple forms, and some of these forms are soloable, some of these forms are two-manable, and some of these forms are a little bit more difficult and require more trainers. I love this model for raiding. I honestly think there should be something like this for every legendary. I think it would make the game a lot more fun. But there you have it, everyone. This is my guide for how you could solo or two-man or even three-man Deoxys in all of its different forms. Definitely go out and pick up attack form Deoxys. That's the one I suggest you get. And the fortunate thing is, of course, it is soloable. So make sure you level up your Gengars and your Tyranitar's and go out and catch them all. Hey guys, before I leave, I have to give a little bit of a spiel. I mean, when it comes to the YouTube algorithm, it's extremely difficult to gauge how successful you can be on YouTube. Like, there are some times where I have a ton of views on my videos, and there are some days where I just have no views on my videos, and it really comes down to the YouTube algorithm. And there's a lot of times where I get dinged for some of the songs that I pick or some of the footage that I show, and unfortunately it's because YouTube's copyright system is a little bit broken. But if you want to support this channel financially, I highly suggest you check out my Patreon. A link to it is in the description below. Your support definitely helps me out, and it helps support this channel because I would love to crank out more videos and increase the quality, and for that to happen, I do need your help. So definitely go and check out that link. And yeah, big shout out and big thank you to all of you for supporting my channel. I hope you enjoyed this video, everyone. If you did, make sure you smash that like button, subscribe if it's your first time here, and don't forget that little bell as well. Check out the links in the description below. I'm Count Jinsula, and I'll catch you all later.